Yeah, for Chip Kelly, it's deja vu. He's back at the Rose Bowl where he coached the last 6 years for UCLA. And already it's his second time. I'm sure he played Oregon when he was at UCLA, but
Sure.
second time this year going against Oregon, where he, built his reputation the first go round. And I'm old enough to remember I asked him before the Rose Bowl, the Masoli Rose Bowl 12, 13 years ago, what it would mean for building that. He was just building the Oregon program at that point, what it would mean to get a win over Ohio State in that situation. And, he had a good answer to it that day. And he's been really good to deal with, I think, at Ohio State, other than that November the 30th is a day that will live in infamy. But he certainly redeemed himself, I think, with how they came out against Tennessee.
Yeah, well, that first quarter against Tennessee answered a lot of questions. And if that team can play the way they played against Tennessee in that first quarter the rest of the year, I don't think anybody's going to beat them. But yeah, Chip is a guy, one of the things for us is, he left Oregon without a real negative divorce, right? We still love Chip. He went on to the NFL. He didn't have the success in the NFL that people maybe thought he was going to have, or that he thought he was going to have. Bounced back to college. But the Chip that we had, no one else has had. No one has had the success that Oregon had with Chip. Chip was innovative with us. He was brand new. He was doing stuff. He dusted off the old Carlisle Indians playbook. I always joke about that. People are like, oh, this is all brand new plays. Like, no, it isn't. These are plays from when we didn't throw the ball. This was when the game didn't have the forward pass. This guy's breaking out some play number 1, 2, 3, and 4 out of that playbook. And he's really become more conservative, I feel like. His time in the NFL and his time at UCLA, he's always had a good running game. They've always been a good running team. And I always kind of think coaches think of and see things through the position that they played, and he was a tight end. And as a tight end, you better block. You better do what's right for the rest of the team. You got to make a play when you need to make a play, but you can also kind of do it all. You can sub for the quarterback if you needed to. So the guy's in a really unique spot in his life. He's made all the money he needs to. He's happy as a clam. He gets to be with Ryan Day, who he really likes, and he has an enjoyable time. I feel like he's probably the happiest now he's ever been in his life.
He'd probably tell you that too.
Well, and just knowing Chip as much as I have, we knew him when he was here, obviously, and he was pretty happy and content here as well. But you could tell he was destined for other things. He was not going to stay here long. And that's the difference between him and Dan Lanning. Now, there's a lot of people still stuck on Chip, with Chip being the ultimate. Dan Lanning's got a better record now in 3 years. Dan Lanning is, and I joked the other night with a guy who covers the Ducks here. I said, everybody thinks that Chip time was the best. I think it's actually right now. I think we're in it right now. These are better recruiting classes. We're in the NIL. We're in the Big Ten. We're in the whole discussion about these guys, top flight guys across the country coming to work. We didn't have that kind of buzz with Chip. Not even close. We went to that game against Auburn. We were outmatched in that game. We kept it close. Played the little duck, played your heart out kind of a game. But, and then to see you guys, that was right after Chip with Mark Helfrich, but it was still basically the Chip team that lost to Ohio State in 2015. And then, and I was at both those games, by the way. So it's going to be fun to see this thing come full circle. And also it's fun to see Dan Lanning be a traditionalist. Dan Lanning is not a guy who's, thinking outside the box. He's clearly in the box. He's thinking 100% in the box. He's from the traditional side of things, and he's from the Kirby tree that's very traditional. And he, it's kind of cool to see a guy who's doing it, quote unquote, the right way that a lot of people can respect, as opposed to Chip, who has always kind of felt like he was running a circus out here, running the Princeton offense. It was a gimmick. Nothing about Dan Lanning's a gimmick.
Yeah, I know that a couple times on the goal line, Chip has channeled his inner Woody Hayes and gone to the robust tee with three running backs lined up alongside one another, and it's worked really well. I mean, they've had a blocking back out in front of the running back, and it's produced some touchdowns.
Why wouldn't you work for Woody? What changed?
Yeah.
And again, I think if I remember
correctly, 1974, he may as well dust it off.
If I remember correctly, though, the first play of the spring game or something that he was there, they rolled out the old Woody formation. And that's the kind of guy Chip is, man. He knows the history of the game. He respects the history of the game. And he would tell you first thing, he would not be anywhere without the game of football.
Yeah.
Football is his thing, 101.
the most recent history of this game was obviously 32-31. So I get where Ohio State fans are pointing to certain things saying, this is why we're going to be better. But I can also understand why Oregon fans, Jordan Birch is playing. Trayshawn Holden should be able to play an entire game. A number of other things. Ohio State got a bit of a gift touchdown their first time on the board at Autzen Stadium. On the Ohio State side, it's, well, we don't have to play at Autzen Stadium. It's a neutral site. Rarely do you see a running back get the ball ripped out of his hands and taken away as a possession. Great play, but rarely do you see that. So rarely do you see an onside kick work the way it did, or
never seen an onside kick like that in my life, Mark.
So there are
I don't even think it was an onside kick. It was they were
like
just trying to squib it. Yeah. And
it was unbelievable. I've never seen it. How much collective football have all of us watched in this room? And we're all like, what the hell just happened there?
It was a great
Direct
kick.
shot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great kick.
Now, Mark, you're onto something there. I think everything is tuned up for this being the game of the year.
Yeah. So basically, I'm looking at both sides being able to say, well, this is why we should be so much better this time than we were the last time. But both have a laundry list of that. But it's adding up, according to Vegas, as an Ohio State 2.5-point favorite. Does that make sense to you, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I never think of Vegas. I don't gamble myself. So I always kind of look at the line. I always kind of think Vegas wants one group to put money down that they're probably not going to put down unless the line is such. The line is like a hook, right? So I always kind of think of it in terms of Vegas will tell you who they think is going to win. They think Ohio State's going to win, but they will tell you in a way with the point total of like, well, how about you throw some money down just to make sure about that, which is their game. I get it. I think Ohio State was favored the first time at Autzen, correct? I'm assuming the neutral site thing with a Rose Bowl has no bearing on it whatsoever. Ohio State travels beautifully anywhere. They could be on the moon. I thought that was funny about Tennessee. Immediately, I went to the Tennessee people in that game. Went to Paul Feinbaum, of course, and they're like, well, we won the attendance award. Basically, great. we had fans that went to a game. It's like, dude, of course, the Ohio State fans came to Autzen Stadium in such a level we have not seen it before. We were hearing that Ohio State fans were buying our season tickets just to make sure that they had a ticket for our game. Imagine buying another team's season ticket just to be able to have. I mean, that's a level of dedication. So
that's absurd.
It is a little absurd, but it shows the magnitude of how much this means to people. And again, I think that's important to understand that these two teams are absolutely the best teams in the country. And in my opinion, this year, the SEC took a step back. And of course, ESPN will never let you hear that. But to me, these are the two best teams in the country, and they get to play in the most iconic venue in the country. And like I said on another guy's show the other night, I said, there's not many things that our country can all agree on, right? I'm an independent thinker when it comes to politics. We can't even agree on what ice cream's the best. But I think most people agree that the Rose Bowl is pretty awesome. And there are some people who believe it's the absolute best, and other people who believe like, yep, it probably is. It probably is. They don't really want to admit it. It's not really the South's thing, but even the South respects the Rose Bowl. So on January 1, 5 o'clock East Coast time, 2 o'clock West Coast time, when that sun is shining, Pasadena, there's no place better. And I think for college football, we earned this. They had so much things change from us, from our West Coast. They took our whole goddamn conference. I mean, and so finally we get something that's redeeming, something that we old schoolers can say, hey, this is something we remember, a classic Midwest, West Coast matchup in the Rose Bowl.
I'll say this first: chocolate is the best, but also
I would go vanilla.
See, and well, Mark, let's go back to 3, please, Mark. No, everybody loves the Rose Bowl, and even if you don't think it's the best, it should be the national title game. That's where it should be every year, because it's still better than any NFL stadium you can come up with. And the SEC might be like, well, we need it in the South, and it's like it's better than anything in New Orleans. It's better than anything in Atlanta. But of course, you're not going to allow the Rose Bowl to lowball the bids and get it every year. So the CFP is going to get as much money out of the venues as they can. But in terms of people saying this is the national championship game, I think it's a great place to play the national championship game. This won't be the national championship game, and if the winners think it is, then they're losing next week. They're going to lose the next game if they view this as a national championship game.
I think that's a good point. You got to play every game one day at a time, and this is a brand new season. It feels like this whole new playoff thing is such a new thing. But I do think that you're right. If you think that you've done it by winning this game, you're going to be sorely mistaken next week. But I also do think these two teams, I think, could beat anybody in the country. So I think it's great to see them play against each other. And I don't care that it's early. If you're going to have to beat Ohio State to win the championship, let's do it now.
Whoever ends up winning this game will be the prohibitive favorite to win it all. The only reason these two teams aren't the favorite right now is because they have to play against each other.
Sure.
And once that is done, then, whoever wins is going to be the one that is expected to win it all.